Hello everyone, it's Lennon, and I am wearing a fez today because I'm dressing up as like Doctor Who / maybe a companion. I don't know. It was fun because the fez are fun. Fezzes are cool. So today is about ancestor work. I want to talk about ancestor work because Samhain's right around the corner, and that's that time of year. The veil is thinning, and we're pulling out all sorts of things to put on our altar for ancestor veneration. And I wanted to chat about it because amongst all the magic that surrounds Samhain, there are so many things that I like to do, like death devotions, ancestor work. This is my crone time. And I just wanted to chat about what ancestor work and a veneration practice looks like to me. Now, there are two types of ancestors for me that I work with, I'll say. There are ancestors that I do not know. Ancient. These are ancient people that are way, way far back in time and space that I did not know about. That my family and none of my immediate family knows about. And I think about that meme that I might post it again on Instagram for you guys, but it was like, if you double your family from now and keep going back 25, 20 years up the ladder, you'll have millions of ancestors from just this millennia. Not to mention the ones that are from ancient times, the times, the times of those cultures that we read about in mythology. We had to have had people that survived all kinds of things from way back in the day. And that's one thing of ancestors that I look at, is the ancient ones that I don't know, but they're still linked to me as far as blood goes and bloodlines. There's that bloodline for me is sacred because it's pulling me through time to those and linking me to those people, connecting me to those people. And I can venerate them. I can thank them for existing. I can thank them for surviving. I heard that in another video. Thank your ancestors for surviving. Like, think about the plague or, whatever. These people were surviving, and that's why you were born, and that's so great. Now, here's one thing that I want to say about the ancestors that I work with. The ancestors that I work with as far as like veneration work, they're the ancient ancestors. They don't have a face. They don't have a name. It's just like a red thread type of a practice for me, that sort of linking me to the ancients. And there's not any like specific thing I can put on my altar for that. And I convince myself within that work that these ancient ancestors, the ones that I am venerating in my veneration practice, are ones that I would have loved. The ones that we would have had great conversations, and they would have given the best hugs, and I just would have loved them. I consider them to look like they have like a grandmother kind of a face, and I can hold that image in my active imagination and connect us and think about conversations we may have had, questions that I may have asked as the young one, and what wisdom would they bestow on me, and what would that look like? Like I said, that just, to me, that looks like great conversations, good advice, great hugs, crying when something doesn't go right for me because they hate to see me upset. Maybe a joke, maybe a dirty joke somewhere. Now, I know there were probably ancestors of mine that I probably wouldn't have jived with. There was some injustice, happening, or it would have been like that crazy uncle that you can't really have a conversation with. That kind of a thing. There probably were, but when I pull out my ancestor veneration, my ancestors, I pull them up, and I want to venerate them, and I want to incorporate them into a practice. I'm imagining the ancestors that I would have loved, the grandmother figures that I would have couldn't wait till I went to their house, on summer vacation. The piping hot muffins they would have had on their countertop, or whatever the fuck food was available back in the day in ancient times. Like maybe a hut, maybe a hut or a stone hearth. I think about those things as well. What their lives would have looked like, and if I was like that granddaughter, like in that time, what would that have looked like? And so I imagine all kinds of things in my active imagination about those ancestors. And I found that connecting with these ancient ancestors that I would have loved and had good things with as far as a relationship goes, I found that what that does to me, as far as in terms of a practice, is it fills me with a feeling of being loved by this bloodline. And it fills me with a sense of relief that I didn't even know I needed. It's like being loving and being loved in return. That feeling of unconditional love that pulls that in me. Family is something that I valued, and I didn't even know that I valued it until I had this practice. One thing it has made me realize is that I was getting things in this practice that I wasn't getting now. And those are yet more things that I journal about during my veneration practice. That what may I get from my ancient ancestors in my practice when I light them a candle or something, or when I offer them something. It'll make me think of what I'm not getting now. And that's a real eye-opener. I was reading something about mitochondrial Eve, this figure here, this female figure here that birthed us all, and how we're all kind of, we all lead back to her, therefore we're all related. And I thought, now that is an ancestor that I can venerate right there. This mitochondrial Eve, this Eve that stands alone at the precipice of time, that birthed us all. And how would what would venerating her look like? I imagine her in stark nakedness, no shame. There's this big light behind her. The light of creation is behind her. I'm getting chills. I just, every time I think of her, I get chills. Like she's here. She's in my heart. She's standing there in her stark nakedness, and she's smiling at me. And then she pulls me in to her breast in a hug, and her skin is warm. Now, okay, let me wake up from this daydream. There's a level, too, about my ancestors that I try to personify to have a relationship with in order to venerate them better, because I'm human and that's what we have to do to kind of visualize. But there is an aspect of the ancients that you don't know, you can't know. It's like an unknowable. And in terms of a witchcraft kind of a practice with this, I think of this kind of like a deity, that there's a level here that I can't know about. And so therefore, there are going to be aspects that don't make sense to me, because this isn't a real person that I can pull it forth in my mind. And that's why active imagination is so powerful with ancestor veneration, in my opinion, is that I need to be able to put this abstract face on them. And that's okay. One thing I do that is kind of silly is I imagine my sacred bloodline, like right here in my heart, and it's pulled like a thread. I keep saying the red thread. It's pulled this red thread. Pulled this red thread through space and through time to my ancient ancestors, right? Like a game of telephone. Like where you have the can, like one person has a can and it's got a string in it, and then it leads to another can, and you could be great distances and talk into the can, and the sound waves will go down the line, the string. It works, okay? And I think about that. I think of me and this ancestor, whoever I'm venerating. Usually it's just an image that pops up, and I use that when I'm sitting down. And sometimes the image will change, but sometimes it doesn't. But I imagine us having each a can, and I ask a question and then they respond, and then I ask a question, or I say something, or I giggle or something, and it's going, that those waves, it is not so much the voice and the sound waves, it turns into an energy wave, and I'm blasting that down the string, and then they bounce their energy back to me. I know it sounds kind of silly, but it works for me. That image works for me. But I asked them questions. I talked to them about my life now, about the children, about the husband, you know, problems that came up, good things, you know, that come up, awards that, you know, we've won, or just tasks that I have in my day-to-day that have been pulling me down. Like, you know, I'm proud of myself because I did this, and it's because of you, right? It's a way to venerate them because you exist because of them. And so when you're down and out and you're proud of yourself for something and you tell them, that's a balance of a balance of energies, and that's why the game of telephone is so powerful in my practice for that. Another thing that I've done in the past when I've written them letters is given them names. That's just another form of personification that I put on them. Maybe I'm thinking about a specific era, right? Like Victorian era or something, or the Crusades, or like I said, go way, way, way back into ancient times. What would be a name from back then? I can make it up, you know? What would be the name? Maybe the name is something that pulls something out of me. I don't know. And I've given them names when I've written them letters. And that's now what I found at the beginning of like learning about ancestor veneration was I felt like I couldn't talk to them. I felt kind of orphaned. I felt like Anastasia at the beginning of that movie. She feels orphaned, you know, she's an orphan and she feels an orphan, but there's still there's like really, really shady memories that she can't put something to, so she doesn't really know where they're coming from. So it's that, you know, you over here feeling alone, but then over here you still have these like abstract memories that you're trying to pull from. And that's kind of what the veneration process is for me, is that within my practice, what I'm doing is I'm making memories, but it's an active imagination too. It kind of has to kick in. So you have to allow yourself time for that to happen as well, because you're going to realize that when working with ancient ancestors, you're not going to have an actual memory. So you have to make them up and make up what their life would have looked like, you know, what their candles would have looked like in their homes, what their hearth would have looked like, and things like that. So there's a big emphasis on active imagination here that I feel is important. In the second part, I've been talking a lot about ancient ancestors because that's probably the most that I deal with, but there are ancestors of mine that I did know about and that have died, and that I can know about them from others that are living's accounts, personal memories and pictures or whatever. Grandparents, great-grandparents, even great-great-grandparents. I have pictures from probably only about 4 or 5 generations out. But I can ask people about them. I can ask family about them and stuff like that. There's another level of ancestor veneration that I can use for like actual family members that I can get personal accounts with. Some of which aren't related to me. Some of which were family to me that are deceased, that were not blood related to me. I feel like that's perfectly okay. I think family is family. Family is a tie. I've said this in a previous video, I had a grandmother figure that was actually just a neighbor. And her husband lived beside us for about 15 years from, I was like I was about 1, and then, you know, until about 15, I lived in this house beside this elderly couple, and they did everything with us. We went and did the same things and played out in the yard together, and we just grew to have this sort of relationship that was grandparent and granddaughters, because it was me and my sister. And up until she died, and how her own blood grandchildren would say that me and my sister were her first grandchildren. And that was very powerful, because we were. And I value that relationship. So now that she's deceased, I can pull her out because she is family. And I feel like it doesn't have to necessarily be blood that pulls us in and demands veneration and demands honoring. I want to honor her as part of my family, just may not be blood. So I want to stress that doesn't have to be blood, in my opinion. So, and I do this too. Sometimes there will be a specific ancestor, like I said, family that I've known of, that when this time of year comes and the veil starts thinning, I usually have a couple of people that are sitting heavy on my mind. And it's usually a grandmother figure or an uncle or something that will flash in my mind. And I think that that is their way of calling me from the beyond. Like, look, you know, maybe I need some veneration this year. And I'll pull out an old watch or an old photograph or a pack of cigarettes for my aunt, or a key to their house that I still have. I still have like a skeleton key for one of my family members' homes that is just like the best thing I have, the best thing I own. It just holds so many memories for me, that skeleton key. And so I have that, put that on the altar. There's physical things that I can touch and I can put on the altar as part of their veneration. And that has helped too. But having both, having the ancient ancestors and the actual ancestors that like I know about and can get stories from, or have like personal effects of theirs to put on the altar, having both has helped work out the kinks in the living family that I have now. The ties, the familial ties that I have now. Maybe they're not all blood related. That doesn't matter. But whatever the ties are now, the way I communicate with certain family members, the way I'm not communicating in the best way, having an ancestor practice has really helped work out some kinks in my family life now, and has shed light onto the things in my life with family and my relationship with those members that has helped. And it's been eye-opening for sure to know that. It's just a great time of the year to pull forth all of those things. But anyway, I'm going to end with this. I'm going to end by saying that the best thought that I've had in my practice, and it's been so powerful, is that I will be an ancestor one day. I actually have that on like an altar card that I put out this time of year. I will be an ancestor. And so there's a portion of my ancestor veneration practice that goes on my own legacy. What am I leaving behind? Like this shift that I'll go through. Maybe a future family member will venerate me because they liked what I did on YouTube, or they liked my book of shadows that I passed down, or they liked my treasure book. I call it my treasure book. It's just a book that I've put all my favorite shit in, like favorite quotes, favorite books, stuff like that. I've written all kinds of things down about myself and like my personality that I would want future family members to know. And what if they want to venerate me? What would I do? What would I come back and say? So those are things that have been powerful in my practice as well. I can ponder on what that may look like. What would they use to pull me forth? Would they use would they use my skull ring? Would they use a cup of coffee? That'll definitely wake me up. Okay, I'm telling you right now. Would they use my favorite candle holder? Or my favorite book? That would be epic. That would just be epic. To have this well-worn, spine shredded book. That was my favorite. And I wrote it down that it was my favorite somewhere. And they summoned me with that. That would just be epic. I'm like, ooh, I've been getting chills this whole video because it's just so epic to think about that. And so thinking about that and writing those things down, what would they put on the altar if they wanted to venerate me? You know, using me too, not just this tie with the ancestors of the yonder, you know, beyond the veil. I'd like to think that my veneration practice, it can be as well-rounded as I need it to be. I can go as ancient as I want, give them names, give them faces in my active imagination, draw them a picture for the altar. Or I can have actual familial ancestors where I have their personal effects I can put that down and bring forth their energy as well into my life when I need it. You know, like my stubborn uncle, or my fiery ass grandmother that took no shit. You know, those types of energies I can pull forth from actual people that like I can remember, or that I can at least get stories told to. And then me. What would me as an ancestor look like? And having all three has really helped have a good practice. So Anyway, that I just wanted to chat about ancestor work. Please feel free to leave your comments below. If you want to add something, what do you do to venerate your ancestors? I'd like to know. If you're willing to share. Okay, only if you're willing to share. I'm so open to having the dialogue with you folks. So, come back because I'll be dressing up again for this month of October. I hope to see everyone again. Much love.